following podcast, I sat down with Izzy Fried, who's a good friend of mine, and I know him from helping the guys in Brooklyn who I work with for 25 years, dealing with criminal defense stuff. And he's been a lawyer for all that time. He's done incredible work for helping the Jewish community in that way. He was originally a soldier in the IDF, and he qualified to be part of the FBI, and he's always been involved with security. He's done amazing stuff with security for the Jewish organizations and shuls, and training people in the security world, understanding the atmosphere we're in today. So that's what we were talking about mostly. But he created a company that is literally built on defending people from school shootings. We were talking about that. He's quite a phenomenal person. We had a great conversation, and I think you'll love it.
Hello and welcome to the Brainstorm podcast. And now, your host, Sonny Perlman.
Hey, we're live. Oh my God, I'm excited that you came.
Sonny, thanks for having me, man.
I'm very, very excited. And I can tell you that we were trying to make this happen before October 7th. Do you know that?
No.
I think it was before October 7th.
Really?
And then you were running to Israel and stuff like that. Is it not before October 7th? Am I thinking wrong?
I honestly don't remember. So much has happened since then.
Okay. Because you're doing some awesome stuff, and we're going to be like trying to dig into everything. But I know you as my lawyer.
That's true. Right. My previous life.
In your previous life.
Yes.
Which is which you did amazing things. Because
we did amazing things.
I mean, you were my one-stop shop for every one of the guys that got into trouble. And you did awesome stuff. So we could have gone on all just about that. And then you up and changed your life.
Change professions, yes.
So could you actually because there's so much, maybe give us a little bit of where a quick synopsis of what happened in your life. Let's say even from being young, just quick, and then we'll get into things. But
sure,
how'd you become a lawyer and then not become a lawyer and all the things that happened?
Wow.
You're still a lawyer.
I'm a recovering attorney.
I love it.
Yeah, which is another good reason to be here with you.
Right.
All right. I mean, it's difficult to synopsize a lifetime in a few minutes, but very shortly, I would say that when I was 17, I made my way over to Israel. No plan, really. I was going to college. Thinking of it, so kids would go to Israel the year after high school. Yeah,
right.
I didn't do that. I went straight to college. My friends went to Israel, so I was a late bloomer, if you will. I went maybe a year later, and then, while I was there, I joined the IDF. I did a volunteer service. Ended up staying there for a little less than 3 years. Came back, went to law school. And when I went to law school, all I wanted to do was become a prosecutor. So straight out of law school, became a assistant district attorney. And that's where our relationship started. What ended up happening was I worked my way through the office and eventually landed in a bureau called the School Advocacy Bureau. The primary focus was on school-related crimes and juveniles, young people committing adult crimes and being treated as adults. That program no longer exists. The world has changed. Laws have changed. But through that, I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I had learned about Our Place and Chaim Glantz. And
we'll just do a quick honorable mention of the most awesome human being alive.
Yeah, absolutely. A gem of a person.
He hates when I bring him up. If you know Chaim.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Chaim is a gem. He's been influential in changing many, many, many lives. So he deserves not just the mention, he deserves a lot of respect and accolades for that. If he was willing to accept it is a whole different ball of wax. But I ended up living around the corner from Our Place, the original Our Place,
Oh, by like near Avenue M.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So in driving here today, I was telling my wife that it was like fringe back then. Like nobody spoke about our place. It was underground,
Right.
right? The Jewish community at that point, it was still taboo. Like you didn't want to talk about our problems that were very relevant, very existent, but still nobody wanted to recognize it. It wasn't spoken about as freely as issues in the community are today. So you guys were like on the cutting edge, in my opinion,
I agree.
of saving lives, of making a difference in at-risk youth because of my position and where I was situated in the DA's office, and because I lived around the corner. I started showing up at our place. So I would go there at night and just drop in and see what was going on and offer my services. I actually at the time had a relative who needed that sort of assistance and help. So it was personal for me, and fortuitous that my position as a prosecutor in that realm afforded me the opportunity to be of benefit when kids would get into trouble. Later on, as I transitioned out of the DA's office and went to private practice, the role continued, but looking at it from a different angle.
Right.
So, I mean, we've had a relationship, certainly in excess of double-digit years. And then we were talking about before we started recording, COVID sort of decimated my industry as a solo practitioner. The court system shut down. Unlike many other industries, it didn't bounce back as strongly as some of the other industries were able to bounce back. And it wasn't just COVID alone, but once the court system shut down, we had, changes in policy, changes in law. We had the Bail Reform Act, and the industry that was already impacted adversely by COVID and not having a place to conduct business was then further adversely impacted by policy changes. So, the writing was on the wall for me that as a solo practitioner, if I couldn't generate income or business, I had to transition to something else. And
Wait, I don't want to cut you off, but I'm going to forget to ask. How is this affected? Like when you're saying this, I realize like the city, I'm thinking of New York City, like it's just chaos. Like in terms of crime and stuff, and the stuff I see on the news and the stuff I see in real life. Like you can't get a cop to show up to your house anymore. That's what it feels like. Like it's like this all was affected by what you're saying, like all this bail reform and all that.
Absolutely. I mean, you have sort of the perfect storm between COVID, the George Floyd incident, defund police, and then sort of liberalized agendas coming in to big cities and impacting not just law enforcement, but how policy is not just set, but enforced. I mean, if you remember, people were going into like Duane Reade's and drugstores and just ripping them off and walking out, not getting stopped. And if memory serves me correctly, there was like a statement in one of the local papers, like up to $500 or $700 you can take and they wouldn't enforce.
Right. I think that was like San Francisco. I'm not sure if that was.
I'm pretty sure it was here.
Oh, yeah?
Well. I don't quote me on it.
That's all right.
The point being is, to answer your question, there was, from my perspective, it's merely my opinion, an utter breakdown in the system, right? If the rules are not enforced, then it leads to chaos, right? Because if I know I can get away with something, I'm going to push the envelope. I'm going to see how much I can get away with. And, largely my industry is the fear of repercussions, the fear of consequences. But if there are no consequences, then the fear goes away, and there's no need for somebody like me, right? Because you don't need my help if you think that there's no problems.
I will tell you from my side, I have guys doing some crazy crimes in Brooklyn, like I'm still there in our place, and I'm always waiting for like, oh my God, the guy got arrested. I'm gonna have to get the lawyer. Nothing happens. They just said, oh, he's 17. Just let him go. I have guys literally going into houses, taking $300,000 worth of items, leaving. Everybody knows. They caught him on the Ring camera. They got him on You know, it's like they literally have all the evidence, and the families are calling me. How can we prosecute this guy? And they're like, the cops are like, well, he's a minor. We can't do it. Like, they're decimating families.
Yeah. And you know, to be fair, police officers are also really nervous and concerned. It used to be a police officer was revered, right? You went to them for help. Now they're the subject of their own prosecutions, right? There's body cam footage. Everybody's got cell phones and cameras. Nothing goes unrecorded these days.
Right.
So every move you make has the potential to cause some sort of liability or blowback. So they're loath to put themselves in a compromising situation that is in line with their job description, right? They're there to enforce the law, to protect and serve, but the people that they're protecting and serving don't have respect for that. And that puts them at a serious disadvantage.
Have you spoken to cops and like they've told you this frustration, or like you're just seeing it from the outside?
I would say mostly seeing it from the outside. I've certainly spoken with, you know, confidants of mine, people that I've maintained relationships with over the years. I can tell you that's the prevailing sentiment amongst the people that I've spoken to. But you also have to understand, New York City has 35,000 police officers. Our city has more police officers than, you know, some states most likely. It's a very large police force. I certainly don't speak for them. I want to qualify my statements as these are my personal opinions.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it was a perfect storm to get you to change things.
Right. So during COVID, having not much to do, it's such a bizarre story, but people were afraid to go out of their homes, right? In New York, at least, it was like if you stepped outside, you were at risk, you could drop dead, ventilators, this, that, and the third. I decided to immerse myself in community. I had just moved to a new neighborhood. I was living in Long Beach, New York at the time. And I don't know what it was. I decided I was going to help elderly people who were infirm and didn't want to go out. And I was going to do some shopping for them, grocery shopping, and deliver it to their houses. And in doing so, that led to a group chat. Oh, somebody's going shopping. If anybody needs grocery items, we'll call it the Chesed list.
Okay.
Right? Or the Chesed chat. So it started out as a Chesed chat, and that sort of got me in the door for a shul in the neighborhood at the Lido Beach. And
first of all, I just wanted to stop you that these are the places I hung out when I was a teenager. I don't know if
really
very few people talk about Lido Beach and Long Beach and Jones Beach and that whole area. That was my stomping ground. We were the beach bums in that area. I didn't live there, but all my friends were out there.
Sure. It's a great town.
Yeah, it's great out there.
It's a fantastic town. I know that they're trying to grow, and they are having success in that endeavor. But essentially what I was doing got me noticed, I would say, in the shul there. People started asking questions. What do I do? Who am I? What's my background? One thing leads to the next. And at some point, the conversation segues to security. And the shul had gotten a federal grant for safety and security upgrades and whatnot. And they asked if I would be willing to assist them because they had applied for a grant. They did not get it the first time. And having plenty of time on my hands and eager to assist with the community, I rolled my sleeves up and I got involved. And then I would say it's metastasized since then. That little act of, I'll say chesed, or, community, I saw the opportunity, if you will, right? We're living, unfortunately, in crazy times. COVID and the George Floyd incident showed us just how an entire world can be impacted and affected by an event in an unprecedented manner, certainly in our lifetimes, not in my lifetime, not in my parents' lifetime. So in immersing myself in the security realm, I saw the opportunity in that these federal grants geared towards houses of worship, nonprofit entities, were specifically designed to provide funding to counter terrorism and threats to safety and security. And that, sort of was in line with a certain aspect of my past and my career. So I thought I can help and assist with that. And I just did a deep dive down the rabbit hole. started to immerse myself in the federal grant space and see what opportunities existed and look for gaps. Like, were there things that I can avail myself of, tapping into my background and experience, that can help communities, not cost them money, right, and make a difference. So it started with training. As I went down the list of things covered by this federal funding, I think the default setting is people want, doors, stronger windows, bulletproof glass, bulletproof doors, camera systems, access control, locks, armed guards, all necessary, all important components. But for me, I was a statistically driven individual. I'm looking at the actual data out there in terms of active shooters and whatnot. And these events all took place despite those security upgrades, despite the modifications that were made. Active shooters, more often than not in a school setting, they're coming from the school. They're a prior student or a current student with some sort of beef, and they're familiar with the security protocols. They're familiar with the layout of the school. They're familiar with the...
Right, they're at the assembly. Everybody keeps saying that.
Correct. So while these upgrades and modifications are essential and do make a difference, they definitely increase the security profile. Once that threat gets beyond all those security countermeasures, what do you do then? How do you deal with that situation? So for me, I looked at the statistics and I'm like, all right, in those scenarios, what can I do that's not being done? Or not that it's not necessarily being done, but less of an emphasis is being placed on that. And I looked at the training component. And I'm like, this is something that I can tap into my background and experience with. I can provide a solution, and it can get funded by this grant. So I reached out to the grant manager for this particular synagogue, and they told me to put a proposal together, put a training curriculum together, which I did. And then I had to find someone who was qualified to give this course, that had all the certifications and qualifications to do so. Part of what I wanted to do was not just provide training. There was sort of a twofold component to that, and that is, based on my volunteer service overseas in Israel, it was important for me to try to find service members who had served our country, the United States of America, and give them purpose after they got out of the military. So tap into that training, tap into that real world experience, and give them a sense of purpose as well. So wow. I really wanted to cover a lot of bases by doing this, and I had to cultivate talent. So I went to social media, and I just started to look for anyone that I thought would be helpful in this endeavor, in this regard, and I started putting out feelers. And, Hashem is amazing when it comes to like everything, but particularly with Hashgacha Pratis, I would say that, if you do your shtadlos, if you put in the time and the effort, Hashem opens the path in front of you. I'm not going to say that anything was easy, but all the opportunities, everything that has come my way has been put in front of me. I didn't have to dig deep to find it. I had to grind for sure, but it didn't take me long to find an individual. The first person I connected with was a guy by the name of Dominic Luke. He was an Air Force pararescue jumper, a PJ, so a Tier 1 Air Force operator.
What does that even mean? Okay, sorry.
Okay, so in the United States...
I do want to say there's a line that's coming to my head, which is luck favors the bold. I will say that.
Yes.
So your idea of doing your shtadlus and then kind of getting lucky. You only get lucky when you're bold. I was throwing that in there.
Right. I think
most people. The fascinating thing I'm listening to your story, it just in general is everybody else was there watching all this happen, and you're the only one who's deciding to dive in. So not the only one, but I'm saying it's amazing when I watch how, in my eyes, and this is a beautiful thing I've been seeing on this podcast, is in my eyes, there's certain people that they see a problem in the world, they can't fall asleep at night until something is done, and then the rest of the world is I guess maybe someone will do it. That's how we all generally think, but there's something, I don't know, I find it's the there's an itch in certain people. So okay, so you got the itch.
So I want to build on that,
Yeah.
Sonny. That's a very important point. I'm actually getting chills now when you say that, because there are doers, right? And there are people who want. Okay, so one of the lines that I use is, you can be problem fixated or solution oriented.
It's a very 12-step idea.
Problem fixated or solution oriented. I have been around enough people, especially in this time frame, that were problem fixated. You must get the vaccine. Do not go out of your house. Don't go in mass gatherings. Are you being careful? Just endless on repeat, right?
Right.
And then there was the solution oriented, which is, I work out every day. I'm not going to stay at home. I'm going to put my work and time and effort into building up my body to give myself the best chance of resistance to whatever this is, right? It was too early, not to go down the rabbit hole with like the vaccines and all this stuff, but there were things that I felt that I can do personally to give myself a better fighting chance. I will tell you just off the bat, I started to ruck when COVID began, which is, I'd go out every morning. I have a large dog that needs a lot of exercise.
Right.
I would put on a backpack with weights in it.
Okay.
All right. So it started out with 20 pounds, and I worked my way up to 30 pounds. In COVID alone, in that time frame, I rucked with this backpack over 2,000 miles.
Holy cow.
To date, and I haven't stopped since. So to date, I'm already past 4,000 miles with this weighted backpack.
And you're just hiking, or
I walk every day. I do 2.5 miles in the morning, and then like 1.5 miles in the afternoon, every day.
Wow.
It became a thing, a routine. But I felt like it was building me up, my immunity and my physical strength. It was helpful for my mind. I started to listen to podcasts during that same period of time. So I was getting knowledge. I was getting outside. I was getting fresh air. I was getting sunlight. I was getting, exertion. So for me, it worked. When other people were catching COVID, behind her, I didn't catch it.
Right.
We're going back in time.
Going back in time. Everybody's caught it now.
Yeah. and even I caught it. So,
Right.
but fast forward. So
Yeah. Why does somebody do they make weighted backpacks?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You don't have to put weights in it. Oh, you probably still do.
So
weights.
there's a company called Go Ruck.
Okay.
And everything about it is so rucking is a military based activity.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it originated, or it's promoted heavily in the Army and like Green Berets and Special Forces. They do these ruck marches, which is these long, exhausting marches. Call them hikes, but with a lot of weight in your backpack. They're not stuffing it with
weights
heavy
because they
weight.
actually have
Right.
heavy
They
things.
they have equipment and materials that they have to carry
Right.
around.
In Israel, they do that big march at the end.
the end,
Is it
yeah.
the same type of thing?
Yes.
Right.
Similar. Anyway, we
sorry.
sidetracked. But so Dominic Luke, you asked what.
Yeah, you
is
said
Air
all his
Force-
credentials, and I was like, I don't know what any of that means.
So every branch of the military has what we'll call the Tier 1 operators, which is the top of the top. So the Navy has the Navy SEALs, and even in the SEALs, they have SEAL Team 6, which is the unit that went and got Osama bin Laden.
Right.
The Army has Delta Force. That would be the top of the Army. And the Air Force, their contribution to the Tier 1 assets is the pararescue jumpers, which are essentially special operators who are like not just like field medics. They're the equivalent of like doctors on the battlefield, but they can join these other units, so like the SEALs or Delta Force, and they can seamlessly transition into those units, provide the support the tactical support that unit needs, at the same time being able to provide battlefield medicine in any environment. So
Wow.
they're incredible.
How come they didn't get a movie? You know what I'm saying? Everybody
Yes.
else has got. We got Delta Force again. I'm like, I never even
Right.
heard of them.
Well, there's something to be said.
You would have
for-
said SEAL Team 6. I'm like, yeah, I know all about that
Yeah.
because there's some movie somewhere.
Right.
They didn't get a movie. Air Force gets they get a little made fun of. That's
Yeah,
the problem.
probably. They're maybe the consummate quiet professionals.
Right. They didn't get a movie, right? Am I
They
right?
did not get a movie, but I know that there was talk of a movie about a particular Air Force PJ in a crazy, crazy story involving the rescue of Navy SEALs, actually, who like single-handedly, took a mountaintop in Afghanistan. I don't know the particulars, but I don't know if that movie will ever come to light. But there was certainly talk about making a movie about this particular Air Force PJ. In any event,
Nice. Okay, so these guys, so he's in the special forces.
he's a tier 1 unit, but specifically with regard to medicine and tactics. And we get to talking. He's out of Louisiana, so you get a Jewish boy, recovering lawyer from New York City.
Right.
He's now talking through social media with an Air Force pararescue retiree in Louisiana, outside of New Orleans. And I basically give him the spiel. I'm like, look, this is what I'm trying to do. And he says, I think you're onto something here, and I'd love to be a part of it. So we ran our first training together. We did a 2-day course covered by the nonprofit security grant, funded by Homeland Security, whereby we trained 8 members of a security team that I had to put together and assemble in tactical combat casualty care, so TCCC, that's emergency medical care to sustain life, stop the bleed, and then emergency action plan, incident command, essentially some basic tools for regular everyday people inside a shul, so that
These are like just members of the shul.
Members of the shul.
Okay.
And I have to say that I couldn't get volunteers to show up to this training, despite the fact that it was free. When you're talking about our community, you have families that are working 2 jobs, right? A husband and wife. They have kids in yeshiva. You're going to shul on Shabbos. Sunday's like your only day for family time off to do something outside of going to shul. So now say, listen, I need you to commit 2 days to training over a weekend, because nobody's coming during the week realistically. And I couldn't pay people to come to this training, to be quite honest.
Really?
Yeah. I bought a breakfast and coffee and bagels and lox and the whole thing to entice people to come. I would say day 1 we had 8 members show up, and this is not a very large shul, so membership is sparse to begin with. I don't know if sparse is the right word. It's to get 8 people from a small shul to show up is a significant commitment, I would say.
Right.
So really kudos to these people for coming. I had 8 people day 1. Day 2, that number tripled, because day 1 was such a success. They found such value, enjoyment, and it generated an excitement that they then went home and told their spouses about, and then more people showed up for day 2 of training.
This is men and women?
Yes.
It's so interesting because we had something similar in my shul. They were like, and some woman said like, oh, it's not sneeze for women to shoot guns. Like they said that. My wife was so furious about it.
This was not shooting guns.
Okay.
Let me be clear.
Okay.
This was emergency management, if you will. So stop the bleed, the use of tourniquets, chest. So essentially we want to keep blood in the body first and foremost. So this was a response to, God forbid, a mass casualty event. If, God forbid, let's say an active shooter made its way into the shul and you had a lot of casualties, it was priority of care, how to stop bleeding, sustain life until somebody with a higher degree of medical proficiency can come in.
Right.
What was important is that where this shul is located is basically an outlier. It's an outlier in terms of a law enforcement response as well as a medical response. Like Hatzalah does not respond there because of how far it is from a Hatzalah base.
Oh, wow.
And their feeling is that a Nassau County ambulance can get there faster than Hatzalah. So, our default setting is not to call 911, it's to call Hatzalah.
Right.
So if that is not an avenue that can be relied on, then we have to rely on ourselves. And, my feeling, as is the feeling of many other like-minded individuals, is this: you are your own first responder, right? At the end of the day, your achrayus is to yourself. if you relinquish that achrayus to somebody else, then you're really relinquishing control over your ability to make a difference. Right? If we've learned anything from October 7th.
Yeah, I was just thinking October 7th, like,
right?
you can't, I mean, the idea that the Israeli military wasn't there, I'm saying, like, they had to take care of themselves. The stories that are coming out is so heroic, but holy cow, they're not here.
Epic
what do we
failure.
do? Yeah.
Right? Of epic proportions.
Yes.
Right? That, for a long time thereafter will probably go down in the history books as, something to be analyzed. And, I'm sure we don't even know all the details of that failure today. But, you look at a country whose security and intelligence is revered worldwide. So for something like this to happen, that was so low tech, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? It was, as low tech as can be, and the results were catastrophic. And we can't even put it into words. But if it can happen in Israel, it can happen anywhere.
Right.
Right? And without getting into politics, you look at the influx of people coming across our borders unchecked.
Right.
Right? That are being flown all over the country unchecked.
There's a thing that they actually just give them a ticket. They can go wherever they want.
Yep.
Yeah.
Put them on a bus, put them on a plane. Right? And there are people.
I mean, there's no security checks or anything like that.
There are people that are on the known terrorist watch list that have made their way into this country through our borders, and they're here. So how is that any different than what happened on October 7th? Right. But for the fact that they haven't done anything yet, but they have the potential to. I mean, it's still a security risk.
Right.
So
what ended up happening with that? You keep going. Sorry with the. No. I definitely want to get to October 7th. I want to ask you some questions about that if you have any insights on that. But but I want to know how you got to where you are with Fox 2 Sierra. Like,
right. Okay. So essentially, sort of a few things coincided and happened simultaneously. That training, number one, happened at the synagogue, right? So from there, I saw that this concept was real. I had proof of concept.
Right.
It can be done, right? And I can put a team together to execute on training. So I had that. I'm also a member of the all-volunteer nonprofit 613, which is a security guard company started by some very good friends of mine in Nassau County. And essentially what they do is they will train up and help and assist get regular everyday people licensed and certified by the state as a licensed armed security guard, which we then train and then embed in their respective shuls, communities, or yeshivas as armed security guards.
Wow.
And it's all volunteer. So you have people from all walks of life. They can be carpenters, attorneys, doctors, accountants, and they're putting in the time and the effort to get themselves licensed. The company has mandatory, training and requirements and qualifications, and then they serve their community on a volunteer basis.
That's only in Nassau County?
No.
What's the name of them again?
613.
I mean, just 613? That's the whole name of the...
Yep, 613 Guard.
Oh, okay, cool.
So they're in 3 states already: New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts.
Oh, wow.
And I would say that they have to date probably over 200 licensed armed security guards collectively.
Wow. Oh, I got to get them in here.
Absolutely.
That's fascinating. Okay.
Absolutely. So, so having been immersed with them and now doing the training, I decided that I can do something here. I wanted to open a company that focused on this since I had all the time in the world. And 613 had been training annually at an academy up in New Hampshire called 6 Hour. 6 Hour is a gun manufacturing company, and they have a training facility in New Hampshire. We would go there semi-annually to train, and we've been going there for over 20 years. But we were looking for different types of training beyond the training we got at 6 Hour rather, and we started to branch out and look for other individuals who could train us in more updated training methodologies, tactics, and whatnot. And I found another company that I started to pursue that can provide 613 with training. I was also immersed in this nonprofit world. And when I was cultivating talent or the company to train 613, I brought them this opportunity. And I was like, hey, not for nothing, there's a pretty lucrative opportunity here for training. I just want to bring it to you. And they had no ties to the community. They didn't know us from a hole in the wall. They reviewed it, and they got back to me and they said they're not interested. But one of the individuals within that company that was a part-time employee, he saw the email thread at some point, saw the opportunity, and reached out to me and said, hey, look, I'm just a part-time employee here. I would really like to do this. It seems like a really good opportunity. I have a few things on my plate right now, but this is something that I'd like to do. And we had a lot of conversations about it. Turns out he's a former Navy SEAL from Team 6.
Really? His
name is Chris Fettis. And Chris and I had a conversation going back and forth. And at some point, he was like, I want to do this. I want to partner with you and do this. So I was excited beyond belief that a Navy SEAL and somebody from Team 6, one of these tier 1 guys, was even interested in partnering with a Jewish kid from New York City, right? I'm like, who am I? Like, am I an imposter that I'm even having these conversations with this individual? But once he said, go, let's do this, now I have to think of a name for the company. So his last name is Fettis. My last name is Fried. I got 2 Fs. So I'm like, all right, 2 Fs. We can do Fried Fettis.
I don't give 2 Fs. No, okay. Okay.
Fried Fettis Securities or Fried Fettis Systems or Fettis Fried, whatever the case may be. I'm like, all right, we could just do 2 Fs and an S. That doesn't sound that great. I'm like, F2S. F2S, not bad. So I go online and I couldn't buy, the domain name was not available for F2S. So I call Chris and I'm like, look, I can't do F2S. He's like, well, let's just do military. We can do Foxtrot to Sierra. And that was a mouthful. But Fox to Sierra was available as a domain.
Oh, okay.
So because it was available, I just bought it.
Yeah, I was really trying to figure out where that name came from.
So that's how Fox to Sierra came to be. It was really 2 Fs and an S, or F2S. Right. And then because that domain wasn't available, we had to turn it into Fox to Sierra.
That's a cool name. Okay, so what do you guys do there?
So Fox to Sierra today is light years ahead of where it was. So I incorporated in February 2022. I spent the majority of 2023 building out the company. Initially, it was just training, so that medical training. And then once Chris came on board, it was going to be tactical training as well. So 613 was sort of our first foray into the tactical side of training. And that went off beautifully. We trained a bunch of guys in Virginia Beach, where their SEALs are based, the East Coast SEALs. And it was fantastic. We were able to use a church down there and do all sorts of tactics and room clearing.
Again, you're training volunteers from the church?
Volunteers from 613. So Jewish volunteers, part of 613, usually the top guys in 613, the instructors, who are then going to take that knowledge, practice it, perfect it, and then transfer that knowledge to the rest of the company.
Gotcha. Okay, so they all flew down there to do this.
Drove to Virginia Beach, spend 3 days there, and we were able to utilize a large church, which closely mimics a shul or school, or combination, because the church actually had classrooms, and we were able to use that to run through 3 days worth of training, which was fantastic. Since then, the company has blossomed tremendously. We now have 16 people as part of the company, 13 of which are prior service members, so various members of the different branches of the armed forces. We have a proprietary product. So the company now is broken down into 3 components. We have the training side, which we've talked about a little bit.
Right.
We have the products side. We have a proprietary product called the Assess Board. The Assess Board is a ballistic dry erase board. So it's essentially a whiteboard that you would see in any classroom.
Right.
It looks like a whiteboard, but it's mobile like a regular whiteboard, but it's bulletproof. So we have a 24 square foot mobile ballistic barrier that is a functional piece of equipment that looks like it belongs in the classroom, so it's innocuous. It hides in plain sight. Mm-hmm. It can be rolled in front of the door and then mounted to the door so that you couldn't open the door or shoot through the door, essentially turning a classroom into a ballistic safe room. It could be used to get a classroom out of the classroom, so you can get a whole classroom behind it, and it provides enough cover and concealment to move classrooms like you would in a fire drill, out of the classroom to a stairwell, leave it, run out of the building, get away from danger. I took that to Homeland Security because I was already working on the grants. I had it evaluated by Homeland Security, and they came back and approved it for funding. So we've sold the board to shuls and schools, utilizing that federal grant that pays for the training, now pays for this board as well.
So the schools could get it for free, or the schools could get it for free, or close to free, or what does that mean?
So the way the grants work is essentially you apply for the grant. If you apply for the grant for target hardening, so up-armoring windows or doors, this would qualify as a piece of equipment that falls in line with that covered area.
Right.
The shul would have to buy it outright and then submit an invoice to Homeland Security, and Homeland Security would reimburse the shul in full.
That's crazy.
So it's free.
That's crazy.
And I know it because we've gone through this process.
So there are a lot of schools that are doing this?
They're not doing it.
Why?
Because
sounds amazing.
It does sound amazing.
Because they got to put the money out first?
No, not so much that. It's that in many cases, and again, I want to be very clear. I'm speaking from personal experience.
Right.
So these are not generalizations.
You're such a lawyer sometimes. Like,
no, but
I will not be caught with saying anything that might. Okay.
No, I could totally be caught.
No,
I want to be honest.
This is your experience, right?
Yeah,
right.
because so here's the thing.
I only want to know your experience.
Great ideas are great.
Okay.
Right? But I want to be clear that I don't ever promote that board or anything that we do as the be-all, end-all. Right? It's one component of a much bigger system that has many different facets that are equally important, some are which are of greater importance.
Right, gotcha.
So a school or a shul has a limited amount of funding, and they have to decide how to allocate that funding, right? And there's a priority tree, essentially. Cameras, access control, armed security guards. I don't get to dictate to the school or to the shul how they spend their money, right? I can just make suggestions to them. And of course, there's the potential for it to look like a biased suggestion. So the way I like to operate is if I go into for example, when I'm done here, I'm going to a school here in Rockland County
to
do a walkthrough and to do a threat assessment. I don't have a preconceived notion of what it is that I'm going to suggest to them because I have no idea what their issues are, right? I don't come there with a brochure going, here, buy my products.
Right,
That's not how I operate.
Right.
What I'll do is I like to listen. Tell me what your problems are. Tell me what you think your issues are. Let's talk through those first, right? I'll give you my observations and opinions about what I see on my walkthrough. And then we do a collaborative conversation about what we think the best solutions for these problems are. And we have to put it in a priority order, a priority list.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. Okay, so I got a basic gist of what's going on. I find your life to be absolutely fascinating. It's really interesting, this whole process. And I think almost every person that I know that is doing awesome things, they almost fell into it. It's like it found them. And I'm hearing that in your story also.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit on like my personal side. I was actually telling you before the podcast started that the Israel topic has been incredibly difficult for me to deal with. And like I'm actually a really sensitive person. That makes sense considering I'm helping people all the time. Like I am a sensitive person. I can't handle Holocaust museums. I just can't handle that level of hatred coming towards me. It's very, very hard. Um, but the Israel thing, I think it also affected. Like I want to love every person, and I don't really. I'm not able to really wrap my head around the idea of like the safety of whether someone's going to kill me or not kill me. The idea of an enemy. Like I'm trying to help people figure out their lives and who they are and be a better person. I'm having a conversation with my son the other day, and I'm talking to him about what would I do about the Palestinians in Israel. And this is my son. He's 16 years old. He's heard me only talk love about all people in the world his whole life. He's never heard anything different. The idea of racism in my house is like non-existent. It's the idea that we're all part of one huge family, and it's crazy to talk about it. And now I'm saying to him, if somebody tried to kill one of you guys in this house, I would kill them all. Like it's not even like 1,000 to 1, 5,000 to 1. If there was a cabal of people saying I would like to kill the Perlman family, I would figure out how to kill every person or figure out how to stop it as fast as possible. And that way of thinking and even saying those lines, and he's like, what about children? What about women? Like he was saying my stuff back to me, which I was very proud of, because he should be thinking that way. But me as a father and as someone who has to protect my people, and like these are my people, my family, my community, my the Jewish people. This way of thinking is there's a juxtaposition. There's two things going on in my head. I want to love everybody. The idea of like Jews and Palestinians getting along and living together is like 100% like what I want. That's what I want. And then on the other hand, I'm literally saying to my very liberal-minded children, I would kill everybody. I would just kill everybody. I'd flatten everything. I'd kill everybody. It's a terrible. I can't live saying this. So I think that it's this great divide in my mind that I haven't been able to challenge. And my sister made a whole lecture. She has 3 kids now in the military in Israel fighting for this. One just joined. One is in special forces, so he came back for the reserves, and another one's a son-in-law who was actually he was lucky because he was in Hebron for the war. You know what I'm saying? Like, can you imagine? Like Hebron is the luckiest place to be right now. So she's dealing with this, and she's getting ballistic stuff very similar to you. She's getting like these bulletproof weapons, and I'm listening to her, and I'm like, I got to stop avoiding this topic, because internally it was too difficult for me to really grab it. And we've been chasing each other for months, and then you just like, hey, how about Tuesday? And I'm like you said, like when my mind said, you're all right to talk about this, everything doesn't have to make sense to you, deal with the topic, talk about the topic, and then you said it, and I'm like, so even though I want to talk about all the things you're doing, this Israel topic is so important. Today is Yom Ha'atzmaut. I don't know when this is coming out. Special flags. I don't know if you got this. I got a flag bouquet here. Little flag bouquet. I need a better vase. But to me, the pride this year of Yom Ha'atzmaut is like, it's boundless. Like if there's ever been a time that Israel needed to exist. It's funny. They're yelling at us. You don't need to exist. And you're like, looking at them, you're like, you're kind of making our point for us. You know what I'm saying? Like you're telling us we can't exist and then telling us to go and leave the safety of being in a country of our own. Like, I'm terrified. So anyway, you went to Israel. You have this security mindset. I don't know if you think differently than me, but I've been avoiding all the stuff you've been saying. I avoid in my life. My wife had to tell me, go get guns. Like, she's much more like, she's listened to the news. She's much more Republican than me. And she's like, go buy guns. And I'm like, it's fine. It's fine. You know, like, we're fine. I avoid it. My brain is like, I study history. I know it, but I shut it off. We're talking about self-development here. That's what we're talking about. She made me go get guns. She made me, like, what you're saying, like, a part of me wants to run. Like, I don't want to live in a world where I have to defend my shul. I don't want to live in a world where, like, I'm terrified of savages breaking down a wall and killing men, women, and children. Like that world, I'm in such a denial that I've been trying to face it out. So with me talking to you is interesting. You're like talking to a part of me that has laid dormant for so long. And I'm trying to push it out. I was telling you, I made this like a couple of statements about, on Instagram when this war started and the hate came my way. I shut off Instagram for a month. I was like, it was too much for me. I couldn't even handle the level of like, and I'm thinking, I love these people. I love all these people. And it's very odd to say because they're definitely our enemies. Like if someone wants to kill you, they're your enemy. But like, I don't want anything but goodness for all these people. And that's how I think. So, but those same people are like, we hate you, you ruined our lives, and we're going to come in and kill you. Like, that's our move. And then the college campuses. So, there's so much. I wanted to talk to you more about that. You're like, I feel like you have your finger on the pulse of this just because of how how you think with the security stuff. And I believe, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but you say you've been to Israel 3 times. Can you tell me about, like, since October 7th?
Sure.
What's going on there? What is your assessment of what's happening? Tell me.
Sure. So first, let me just respond and comment
Yeah.
to some of the things that you said. I think how you feel is not unique to you. I think that if we took a cross-section of Jews in the diaspora, it would probably be almost universal, right? Complacency, it's who we are. Like if it ain't broke, why fix it? And as long as we can go on with our day-to-day, I don't know how much time in our days we think about these problems, right? Because nothing's a problem until it's a problem. Mm-hmm. 2, I think that there's a dichotomy with what's going on. I would venture to say that if you, again, took a poll, most people would want peace in the Middle East. And nobody's looking to eradicate the Palestinian people. That was never an issue. Israel wouldn't have given back Gaza if that's what they wanted to do, right? That was a full withdrawal from Gaza. So the settlements, the military, they relinquished the entire control of that area and gave it to the Palestinians. We have to differentiate between Hamas and Palestinian people, right?
No, not right. I want to disagree.
Okay.
No, I'm saying I'm furious about this point.
Go ahead.
They would try and kill us before Hamas. Like I don't know. The Hamas to me is an outgrowth of the vile hatred. I'm not saying that they don't have a reason. I've studied history. There's a reason to be angry, but there is a lot of anger, and 70 to 80% of them are supporting Hamas today, even after all this. I will say that this differentiation thing seems to me, I'll use a better word, so I'm on my podcast. It seems like political BS. Like to me, it's like, what are you talking about? To think we have to wipe out Hamas because that's a military arm that's got to go.
Agreed.
But to separate them, I'm disagreeing on it. I don't know why more people aren't getting upset like I am. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, there was no Hamas when they had the Hebron riots, and we didn't even have a country yet. There was an issue going on the whole time. So okay, I'm going on.
No.
I don't know why we're separating.
You're making some very important and valid points. All right, but let me sort of juxtapose that with an answer. So to be fair, as much as I like to consider myself security minded, I had been building out a relationship with my counterparts in Israel pre-October 7th, right? So I had paired up with a nonprofit organization here in the United States. They had tasked me with building out a connection between us here in the United States and Israel. So utilizing some of my contacts and connections, I started to build a bridge between the United States and Israel with an entity called Yatar. And Yatar is the Tactical Vehicle Assault Unit. And they're tasked with literally driving up and down the border between Israel and Gaza.
Right.
All right. That's their primary area of operation. Like 613, it is staffed primarily by civilians, right? So people who are reservists, people who are no longer in the military, family people who have regular day jobs, right? But security is a priority for them. There is a military attaché attached to each vehicle, and their job, again, is to secure the border.
In Gaza specifically?
Specifically around Gaza, so the settlements around
Holy
Gaza.
cow. Okay,
So
now you
they
got to
had
tell
eight,
me.
eight vehicles going into October 7th. And the point is that this nonprofit that I had partnered up with and connected to Yatar, they had scheduled several trips to go over pre-October 7th. And like you, I'm like, I don't have the time right now to go over. I'm happy to make the connections and build on the relationships. But, I have life to deal with on my end. I was building out, Fox 2 Sierra and the business. So I would set everything up, put everything in play, and then small teams would go over. And essentially they would bring, in an effort to show commitment to the cause, they'd bring tourniquets, medical gear, things of that nature that they weren't really asking for, but we came bearing gifts, right? And, I was contacted with every one of these trips. I'd get a call, let's say on Sunday, going, hey, we're thinking of leaving Tuesday or Thursday and going for 5 days. That's not enough notice for me, being married with a family and having a job. I don't have that luxury today, or at least I don't give myself that luxury of just dropping everything and going. So we did 2 or 3 trips before October 7th. When October 7th happened, and I can show you the text messages.
Yeah.
All right. I'm texting with the guys, the commander of Yatar, right, going, hey, just saw what happened with Shabbos. And I'm like, are you guys okay? We're praying for you. We're davening for you. And I got a response. I'm getting chills now. I got a response right away that 2 of the guys were killed immediately. Like they were defending Nahal Oz and, amazing guys. And they got killed, defending the settlements. So the minute I got that, and he's like, and then he goes, get me off this chat right now. Remove me from the chat. Hamas has got their phones. So they're tracking. And I don't want them to have my information. So we shut down that chat right away. I contacted the guys. And I'm like, we need to get over there right away. So, we pulled all the strings. And we were at the airport within a day, I would say. And then it took us 3 continents, 3 days to get into Israel. And we showed up with duffel bags with body armor, tourniquets, chest seals, a bunch of equipment. I think we brought probably 30 sets of body armor. So just like, that's all we brought, and carry-on luggage. That's it. And you're on planes. So mind you, all the flights were canceled into Israel.
Yeah.
Right? So we were on a chartered flight with no markings on the plane. So no symbols, no nothing. You're there with the families of people who were killed, returning home to bury their dead, soldiers from all over the world that are returning to go fight, and foreigners from NGOs, non-governmental organizations on the plane. You had people taking drones. You had people bringing, it was wild to see when you think about security, when you go to El Al and you're grilled, did you pack your bag? Are you bringing anything? Are you taking anything? And then just the duffel bags that were piled up with all this gear.
Yeah.
That
Like weapons.
Well, no weapons. No
Okay,
weapons.
yeah.
You can't bring weapons.
Right.
Like that. But anything that's non-regulated, they were just, welcoming it with open arms. There was desperation. I don't even want to say it was necessity. There was a feeling of desperation in the air.
Yeah.
And then you get there. All right. We've gone out. We've visited a lot of these places. I have seen with my own eyes.
Wait, when did you get there?
I don't remember the exact day. It took us 3 days to get there. So not long after October 7th, we were boots on the ground over there. Now, mind you, everybody that was a member of Yatar or whatnot has been called up and drafted. All the reservists have been called up. It is unprecedented. I think they had 300,000 people respond to the calls for reservists, which is, again, sort of where we encountered all these problems was the military didn't have the equipment to hand out for all these people that came back.
Right, because
So
everybody
they're
came.
missing body armor. They're missing helmets. They don't have the requisite gear. They're giving them weapons that are, dated and antiquated, and everybody's like saturating these areas, Gaza in particular. But what ends up happening is that you have all these settlements everywhere else in Israel that are now left vulnerable because all the able-bodied men of age and women are now being funneled either straight into Gaza or they're going up north towards Lebanon, which left gaps.
Right.
And so we were tasked with going to the settlements where the reservists were now no longer there to protect the settlements, and our job was to protect the settlements, to put teams together and start working on infrastructure and how we can, improve security and upgrade the security profiles of those locations. I mean, I can tell you, I have pictures that I can show you. You walk out on the porch of the house that we're staying in, which was one of the commanders of Yatar, who was a Tzan Khan, a paratrooper, and I had a rangefinder, and I'm 350 meters away from Zatria, which is an Arab village, okay, across an open olive field. So there's no fences, there's no gates, there's no lighting, there's no nothing. So what happened on October 7th could happen anywhere.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in between. There's nothing to stop that.
I will tell you, my sister lives in Neve Daniel, and the other day she texts us. I'm telling you, I'm so emotional about this. Sorry. She texts us like someone's like they're being infiltrated, and she's like the strongest person I know. Like, and she fell apart. Like it happened to be a false alarm. But they're in the West Bank, they're by Neve Daniel, and it happened to be two soldiers that went off course, and they were a little lost. The cameras picked them up, and they would look like dark shapes, so everybody freaked out. But just the trauma of having that happen again. So that's what you're saying. It's
right,
absolutely crazy.
So you were also saying that there's no differentiation between Hamas and Palestinians. And I want to agree with a component of that, in that while we're there doing our mission, our what we're being tasked with, we're presented with things that were recovered, from Be'eri and Nachal Oz and all these other places. I mean, I saw in my own hands a handwritten map, right, of the settlements with houses and the names of the residents of those houses and where they're located.
You saw these maps?
I saw these maps. I can show you a picture of it. All right? And they were done by Palestinian day workers whom the Israelis allowed to come in and paid to work on these kibbutzim. Okay? And we can get into why they did that. But, the people living on the border are not your typical, they're not hardliners.
They're very left-wing.
They're liberal, let's live together, and they're the ones that got affected the most, right? You look at Nova, the music festival and whatnot. These are just free spirits, right? Not, they're lovers, not haters. So the very people that the Israelis had brought in to give jobs to and pay them a wage that they could never make in Gaza, right, were ultimately the ones that betrayed them and sold them out to Hamas.
Right.
But I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that if this was, colonialism, if this was, apartheid, if this was, Israel's desire to commit genocide, they just go carpet bomb the whole place and just wipe it off the map, honestly, if that's what they want to do. They have the capabilities of doing that. They're not doing this. This is, from an outsider's perspective, you don't realize how very particular this invasion is, all right, and this assault is, they're not looking to kill women and children. They're doing everything that they can. I mean, there are recordings that I've listened to, the leaflets that they drop in advance of a bombing or whatnot. They tell everybody, they call you on the phone and say, get out. How many members of the family are there? We will wait till you all get out of the building, right? Because they're not looking to cause collateral damage. The problem is that when you have an enemy that uses regular everyday people as shields and they hide behind it, or they put their headquarters under a hospital or in a school, right, around children and playground, and they hide behind these people, this is not conventional warfare. This is as unconventional as it gets.
No.
You're putting people in an impossible situation, and you're putting Israel in an impossible situation. When people start yelling from the rafters about all this stuff, I'm like, remember Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
Right.
All right. What was the
Yeah, but that's been changed. Like, everybody says Hiroshima and Nagasaki was evil now. Like, it did save probably 1 million lives.
Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
It's great to look back in time and go, oh, maybe, but at the time, that was an appropriate response.
Right.
It ended the war.
Yeah.
It ended the war, right? And that was, at the time, deemed an appropriate response to the attack on Pearl Harbor. So, in what past conflict has there ever been a situation where there hasn't been collateral damage? How many civilians are killed in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Iran, in Syria, in Lebanon, all over the world? What genocides are being committed in Africa, all over the place?
Yeah.
But nobody's jumping up and down and screaming about it, right? This has become a platformed, endeavor right now. And you look at what's going on here in the United States. So you in terms of what I do now, it's because of, this is what fuels me. This is what powers me. You were saying, some people sit back and wonder what they can do. I don't have that luxury. I got kids. You got kids, right? And I can't think of my children living in fear. Like, that's not going to happen on my watch. So I'm going to do everything that I can to empower my children and my communities, so that you can walk out and be proud to be Jewish. You can have a flag, and they're winning the media war, 100%.
Yeah.
We're preconditioned to not be outspoken. We're preconditioned to be, I don't want to say meek, but we're kinder, gentler as a nation, as a people.
Yeah.
Right? But like you said,
Also, we don't play the victim card well, and I don't think we should, but it works. I'm saying,
oh, absolutely.
I will say the fascinating thing about Israel. I was on a tour, a UJA tour, maybe 15 years ago. They picked a group of graduate students, and we all went over there on this really interesting tour. And one of the things they was showing us is, like, this where bombs hit and this where bombs hit. And I'm looking around, I'm like, there are no bombs hit here. They say Israel has a policy that the next day they fix everything immediately. We are not victims.
Correct.
We do this. And I'm like, you realize that's PR nightmare for you, because you can't. Now everybody's screaming Intifada. I was in one of the Intifadas when I was in Israel, I was at a couple of bombings, and one of them, they had 3 bombs right in Ben Yehuda. And I was very lucky. It's really a wild story that I was supposed to be there, and thank God my wife was late. And she wasn't my wife at the time, but she was late, so we didn't end up in that spot because that's where we were going to be. But the next week it was fixed. Like, they just fixed it up. That's what we do. So I think a part of this is the meek part, but also the part of it is we won't be meek. So then we clear it up. Like, we're going to clean it up, make it look all right. We're going to make a memorial there right now. We're not going to allow our buildings to remain smashed. And we've done that already. We did Kristallnacht. We're not doing it again. Like, you break us, we come back. So it's interesting. I think that's amazing, but it's also a PR nightmare. Like, they're never going to fix their buildings. They're going to show everybody those pictures of those buildings forever and ever and ever.
Great. That's the prerogative.
Right.
They can do that.
I know, but I'm saying that's a PR thing,
They're definitely winning the PR battle 100%. I mean, if you look at what's going on around the world, it's insanity. It's insanity that good people, regular, everyday people, are standing by and just watching this happen, and nobody's doing anything. It's wild. I mean, I think the tides are finally starting to change,
Do you?
I mean, they're definitely sending the police in, to the campuses, to several campuses, to break up these encampments, if you will. There's a lot of work that still has to get done. I don't think it's over. I think that the problem has gotten to a point right now where undoing it is going to require, something dramatic and drastic. And I don't know that people are prepared to do what needs to get done to eradicate this. So for the time being, it's in your face. What I'm doing is
Right.
I'm fueled by that, right? I mean, there's a saying: better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
Right.
So
Shoot, I wanted to be the gardener.
well, you could be a gardener warrior.
Gardener warrior.
So I personally, again, my opinion is I think that it is incumbent on us as individuals to prepare ourselves. Starts with mindset, which is what we're talking about right now.
Right.
It's no different than recovery, right? If I don't believe that I can change, then I will be controlled by my addiction, right? If I relinquish power and control over myself to my addiction, the addiction wins.
Right.
And the hardest part is taking back that control. I'm guilty of it myself. I've made a lot of mistakes in life, right? If I sit down and analyze it, it's where I refused to make a stand or chose an easier path because in the moment, it's what appealed to me. It was like instant gratification. And I didn't have the Chachma Bina Das at the time to step on the brakes and tap them a little bit and go, hey, slow your roll. I know this looks like a good idea right now, but there's going to be consequences to it, right? Not to go back, but October 7th is a prime example of how complacency kills, right? We live in a country that has the best intelligence agency in the world, one of the mightiest militaries. I could do whatever I want, and everything's fine. And what happened, in my opinion, is that
Yeah, I was going to ask as a security person, what the heck happened?
no different than what's happening here, which is when you sow distraction, and the distraction could be George Floyd, it could be politics, it could be the judicial, changes that were coming in Israel.
Yeah, there was rallies and riots.
Exactly. So
Not riots.
when I'm focused, well, there were certainly outcries, right? And it was
Yeah.
definitely something that was divisive internally. So if I'm facing inside, if I'm looking internally and looking at problems internally that are created, that are distracting me from my external perimeters,
Right.
then I don't see what's right under my nose because I'm fixated, again, problem fixated as opposed to solution oriented. I'm not looking at where the real problem is. It's sleight of hand. It's no different than the street performers taking your money and going, all right, I'm going to move these nutshells around. Tell me where the quarter is. It's a scam.
Right. So you saying that the whole thing was distraction? Like they just were not focused where they should have been focused?
I'm not saying that
the-
was the exclusive
Right.
reason.
I mean, the level of security there is still outrageous, no? On the Gaza border, isn't that the most secure border in the
it
world?
closely mimicked the Yom Kippur War, which is it was Chag, it was Yantif. The bases were undermanned. People were home with their families. They had no. The question is, like 9/11, was there intelligence that was not acted upon? And that's why I say, we'll probably analyze and study this for years and years to come.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, yesterday was Yom HaZikaron. The general, and I forget his name, took responsibility yesterday. Like, this happened on my watch.
Really?
This is a security failure. All these people that, these soldiers, these chayalim and chayalot, and all the people that happened on my watch, and I'm going to take responsibility for it. And that's another thing that's incredible about Israel. They don't waste time taking ownership and responsibility about their shortcomings. Civilians are killed, or something happens, or there's a blue-on-blue incident, and soldiers, those hostages that were killed by soldiers,
Yeah, it
because
was so
they
sad.
weren't able to identify them in time, or they got intelligence that Hamas, terrorists were, they're not wearing uniforms, so it could very easily have been mechablim. It could have been terrorists,
Right.
And it happens. They take ownership over that. They don't brush that under the rug, and sometimes people get prosecuted for it. And you sit here and you wonder, like, oh, why are you prosecuting somebody? Because they take this stuff incredibly seriously.
Oh, Mike, closer to your mouth. Sorry.
They take this stuff incredibly
Lower it a
seriously.
little. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, how are we taking it seriously? I don't know. I guess there's still an anger in me. Like I would say anger. It's like you were supposed to have our back, Israel. Like that's the one place that like we have an army and we could watch. Like when I hear a horrible thing like like in Pittsburgh where someone attacks a shul, like I don't expect an army to be there. But in Israel, that was really shocking. Like, well, now I am expecting an army to be in every shul because of you. But I'm saying, in general, the Israel thing, I think the feeling of vulnerability after this, I don't even know if they felt this in Yom Kippur War. I don't know. There's something about this that is so vulnerable. These weren't armies. These were people with pickup trucks. Ran down a wall and kept going. Like, and it took us 12 hours to respond. Like that idea is like, I don't know if you, I don't know. Okay, I mean, I'm just frustrated by it, but I'm saying as a security guy, you must be someone who's very involved with security. You must be also, have you like looked at the whole situation and be like, what went wrong on a security side, not just the distraction side, but like, what were they doing? Did you get to like look at what the security was, what the breakdown was? I don't know if this is so important. I am super curious about it.
So, to be clear, so what we were tasked with doing and what my trips to Israel have been and what they continue to be today is preventative, right? Like learning from what happened. Like my job, okay, on a smaller sense, I don't spend time doing a deep dive and analyzing all the issues of what happened. I'm aware of what everybody's aware of, and I can now apply the basic knowledge of that, go to a different settlement that is facing similar issues and crisis, and going, okay, how do we prevent this here? Which is no different than going to a shul, which is no different than going to a school or a yeshiva or a community center or any community, all right? It's going and saying, look, this happened somewhere, right? How do we stop that and change the trajectory of this possible outcome in this particular location? What can we do to beef up the security? How do we strengthen the infrastructure? Are there communications? What failures happened over there that we can now learn from and fix over here or work on? Not necessarily fix,
right,
but improve, right? So I can tell you, like, these outlier settlements, they're a drive from any military response. It's going to take time, all right? And these events happen quick, and they're decisive. And if you don't have a plan, which is, again, what I've built this business around, is developing a plan, training mindset, and being prepared, right? And then giving you tools and knowledge to give you power to make a difference, right? I don't need you to go to war. I need you to be able to stand your ground long enough so that when the cavalry arrives, we're not dealing with dead bodies.
Right.
Right? That's essentially what we're trying to do. And that could mean adding cameras, early warning systems, communication, tactics, medication, medical services and training, equipment, which there's a tremendous need for that.
Are you training all the houses, or is like a security force? Sometimes security forces were overwhelmed.
Right. So it would be the Kitat Konanut, which is like the civilian volunteer guard.
Like our Shomrim, basically.
Right, or the equivalent to, let's say, 613. And I just want to, this is not me, all right? I'm a cog in the wheel. There's a lot, there's so many people involved in so many different aspects of this, all contributing for the greater good. I'm just like a small component of it. I'm going on podcasts and I'm talking about it because I think no different than recovery and addiction and the issues that plague our community, if we don't talk about it, if we don't pull back the rug, right, and put this out in front of people, then that complacency is going to continue, right? An object in motion tends to stay in motion unless and until it's acted upon by an equal and opposite force. This conversation, hopefully, is the beginning of that.
Right.
We have to change our day-to-day lives. It's not enough to go to work now and pay for your yeshiva tuitions and whatnot. We are, unfortunately, at war. Some of it's a media war. Some of it's an actual war, right? we have to change the trajectory of our lives in the way that we think, right? We can't be complacent anymore. It pays to have a requisite amount of minimum training and experience so that you feel empowered, no different than you running a scenario through your head saying, God forbid, if somebody did this to my kids, I would pull out all the stops. I would, pillage and plunder and do everything that I can. You don't have to do that.
I really don't want to do that.
You don't have to do that. There are things that you can do in a preventative posture, right, to hopefully avoid that, right? If I can avoid something, that would be the best way to deal with it. And then if push came to shove and you had to deal with it, have requisite baseline skills, right, so that you are empowered and your children are empowered. I can tell you that having gone over there as many times as I have, we are now partnering with a special forces unit in Israel. And we are in the development stages right now of doing a program for Jews in the diaspora globally, which is going to be a 3-week program, a week of training in Israel, 2 weeks in training here in America with Israeli Special Forces, our company and our Special Forces, cadre, our teachers, to do exactly that. Mindset, empowerment, knowledge, skills, training up so that when you go back to your communities, you can change the way things are done so that you're not relying on the military, on law enforcement. You interact with them. It's a collaborative effort. You complement one another, but you're not waiting for them for your survival.
Right. It's interesting. You remind me of something that somebody had analyzed in World War II. The reason the Japanese didn't really attack us on land is that that the civilians have so many weapons that we would overwhelm them with the idea. Like when I think of you live in Texas now, so I wouldn't mess with Texas. I'm saying if I was a military, is there a gun in every house? Probably pretty close to it. I mean, I'm probably 75 guns in every house. I don't know. And tigers. That's right. Do you know that statistic? That there is more tigers in captivity in private ownership in Texas
than anywhere in the world.
Than wild in the whole world.
Yes. Yeah.
I love that.
There's a lot of wild animals in Texas.
They're into that.
Yeah.
Getting
and most
big,
of the land in Texas, which is one of the largest states in America, is privately held.
Is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, when I drove through Texas, it was just endless.
Yeah, you could drive for days.
It's just unbelievable.
It's a big state.
How is it, by the way, just curious, you went out to Texas mainly for the work you're doing, or you wanted to?
So in 2023, we got a lot of traction in Texas. We do a lot of work. There's a private Catholic school that took a lot of interest in that board I was telling you about, the Assess board. That's what actually brought us out there. The head of security there is a former Secret Service agent, and our board apparently went viral on some law enforcement chat group that was made up of many Secret Service agents. And we were going to Texas to meet with the Deputy Secretary of State to talk about funding the board in the state of Texas. And fortuitously, the guard at the shul that I ran this first training in showed me a text saying, hey, your board is going viral on this Secret Service chat. There's a guy in Texas who runs security. And he connected us to the head of security at this school. And we met him when we were out in Austin meeting with the Deputy Secretary of State. And since then, we have been thick as thieves. We've done a lot of work at that school. We've done a 3-day immersive active shooter response with their security team. But that's the long-winded way of saying that got my foot in the door in Texas. And because it's kind of similar to the Jewish community in that if you do something that benefits somebody in a positive way, then the Jewish geography and the Jewish telephone starts to light up and the word gets out. And that's what happened for us in Texas. And in 2023, I was going back and forth so often. And because my previous job here was dead, at some point I was just I'd rather be in Texas and travel to New York than be in New York and travel to Texas. Texas has San Antonio, where I live, has 2 nicknames. It's called Military Town
Is it?
Yes, because
Okay.
there's more military bases there than anywhere else in the continental United States. And it's called Mission Town because there's more churches and God in that side of town than anywhere else. And there's love of Israel there that is fascinating. You look at the videos on social media of people ripping down the signs for the hostages here in New York City, which has a tremendously large Jewish population. And then you can drive down the highway in Texas and pass a church, and they have massive billboards going, "We support Israel and bring the hostages home." And I couldn't help but like be emotional over that. I'm like, "Ger ha'yisi be'eretz nachriya," like here I am, a stranger in a strange land. I'm uprooting my whole life to move to Texas, and I knew nobody in Texas outside of professional work. And then to drive down the highway and see these signs and meetings that I have, my name sort of betrays, my heritage. But I have people come up to me, and no lie, okay, that I look at, they could be like ranch hands for all I know. Big, burly dudes, who have mitts for hands, right? And they, we can have a business meeting. They'll come up after the meeting, grab my hand, which gets swallowed in their hand, and they pull me in close, and they go, "I just want you to know, man, we support everything you're doing over there." And I'm like, who are these guys? We love Israel, and if you need anything, let us know. We'll be there. All right, these.
Wow, I'm gonna make a suggestion that you fly a bunch to a new organization where you fly us New Yorkers down there, just so we can see this. I fly. You pull into the parking lot. I fly an Israeli flag on my car. I didn't realize how weird that was. When this whole thing started, I was like, okay. I started going to stores. I usually, when it's Yom Ha'atzmaut, I put a flag on my car. I'm like, there's a war. We got to have a flag on our car. I don't see it anywhere. Like, people are terrified. People told me, take that down. They're gonna break your windows, and I mean, I haven't seen too much hate. I've only got one person say something nasty to me, like, the entire time. Like,
well, no, you said on social media you got a lot
on social media, but social media is like wild because it's like I don't even know if it's real people.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me because I thought I was gonna get a lot. I think what we think social media is real, and we're much more, but. I've had people give me like dirty looks and stuff like that. The feeling in New York, at least from my experience, is that the non-Jews hate us. And like, that's the feeling. When you're talking about this, I'm like, I don't want to go to Texas. Like, I don't want to live in a place.
Well, that's why we're doing 2 weeks of training in Texas, right? Because we're going to bring you to a place that not just provides you a location and an opportunity to gain invaluable and necessary skills. You will be surrounded by people who are not of the same faith as us, but treat us with respect and support in a way that is hard to feel right now in New York or California or anywhere else where these riots are going on campuses.
Do you have any thoughts about why there's this big dichotomy between like the liberal states and I'm not gonna say liberal or Republican. I don't know. Like, why certain people love Israel and love the Jews and other ones seem to despise us? Like, do you have any thoughts on that? It's very confusing to me. But being down there, have you ever spoke to anybody about it, like a non-Jew?
Absolutely. I'll tell you my personal experience.
Yeah.
The people who love us are Bible-thumping individuals who prioritize religion, all right? The people that I've encountered in Texas who are not Jewish, Catholics, all right, the reason they support it is because they believe in the Old Testament. The difference is that they have the New Testament. But they believe that the Jews are the chosen people, and they really hold us in high regard, which is why they support Israel, is because they do believe that God chose us. There's obviously differences between the Old Testament and the New Testament. We could probably spend days debating it,
right?
But they don't. They want to learn more about our culture and the way we learn the Bible. They know, in fact, I will tell you this, they can quote you scripture line and verse without opening up a Bible. They know it all. They can recount conversations. It's actually wild, and it makes me insanely jealous that I can't do that. And I went to yeshiva my whole life, but I can't do that. I can repeat what I remember and what we were indoctrinated with, but they read the Bible today and they live their lives according to the Bible. So they really hold us in high regard. You go to other states where religion is not prioritized, and instead what's prioritized is sort of the political flavor of the week of inclusion and, it's how our conversation started, lawlessness, if you will. I mean, what is religion if not a set of, I don't want to say rules and regulations, but a doctrine to live your life by, like a roadmap for living a life that is God-fearing. There's respect in that. And there's, real, I want to say honor, but honor and respect. Whereas you go to these campuses, there's no honor there. There's no respect. It's the chiral opposite of that. It's a Hefkerwelt, if you will. It's like lawlessness. It's if you get to talking with any of these people, I'm not a betting man, but I will put money down that they have no idea about the history of the region. They don't know what it is that they're chanting. They don't understand what they're saying. They don't know what from the river to the sea actually means. They don't know what true genocide is. They're touting lines that have been that have been fed to them, that a basic surfacey conversation will reveal the level of ignorance that they have. And it's fascinating to consider that they're going to schools that are regarded as the highest levels of education in this country that cost astronomical sums of money. I made a post about it on LinkedIn, and I was like, when I heard about October 7th, I dropped everything and I ran over. And I saw with my own eyes what had happened there.
Right.
And I didn't run into Gaza and start shooting. I brought medical equipment. I brought much needed equipment and support, and I helped people train in a way to save lives and be preventative, right? But what I didn't do is block traffic, right? I didn't have a sit-in. So my message to all these people, suggestion, it's not a message, it's a suggestion. Instead of doing that here, take your tuition, buy a ticket to Gaza, buy a ticket to
Could you go into Gaza?
Iran. I mean, they propose legislation in the House right now that anybody arrested and charged and convicted of, rioting on behalf of Hamas be sent there for a mandatory 6 months. Yeah, so I don't know if that's actually going to pass.
Where is this? This is
here in the United States.
The federal government?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So, I mean, right? But, I mean, the truth of the matter is, why are you blocking the Brooklyn Bridge? And what do you hope to accomplish by doing that? Again, problem fixated or solution oriented. When I see a problem, like you said before, my inclination is to do whatever I can to alter the trajectory of the problem. Why? Because it drives me batshit crazy. It really gets me annoyed, and I don't like being annoyed, so I'm going to do what I can to make myself less annoyed.
Right.
Right? These people are just like causing chaos. There's no benefit to society. They're not changing the outcome of what happens overseas. So take your message and bring it to where you think it's going to make a difference. Can you imagine? And I say this with humility and respect, but the irony is just fantastic. Gays for Palestine. Can you imagine trying to do that in Gaza?
Yeah.
You will be lynched and killed. They'll throw you off the roof of a building. You're not going to be welcomed there and embraced with open arms. But if you went to Tel Aviv, you would be.
Right.
Right? So what is going on in this world? It's ignorance. It's this turning a blind eye and a deaf ear to reality. It's not learning the real history. It's not asking questions. It's being told that this is popular right now. It's giving a voice to people that probably never had a voice before in their lives, and they're getting platformed for however long it's trending.
Well, the thing that really terrifies me, and this was a thought that I had. because I was looking at the numbers of flat earthers in America. And I did a calculation. I think 2% of America believes that the Earth is flat. That's more people than Jews. Just I think what I'm trying to say is that our ability to be sheep and follow is terrifying to me. It's absolutely terrifying. So I mean, I'm listening. Actually, my son was telling me yesterday. He says he actually turned off his TikTok. He just decided. I didn't even know it. It's just been off it for months and months and months. I'm like a little more open with this. I probably shouldn't share that. Everybody's supposed to be very careful. But I think my kids have learned how to deal with life. And, case in point, he shut it down after October 7th. He turned off his TikTok and for a whole bunch of reasons. But he's saying it's very compelling. He's saying that they are saying the same statement, the same stuff over and over and over till you start believing it. And he's like, I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle this like vitriol. He wasn't using vitriol as a word, but I'm saying he was like, I couldn't handle this barrage of believe this, believe this, believe this, believe this. And it's terrifying because you have social media like controlling where we're going. And you were talking about like bots and all that stuff. I don't know much about that. I wonder how much that comes up in like the security world. I like the idea of like trolls and bots. I don't even understand. I mean, like there's fake people trying to convince us to do different things. I've heard it talked about. I just don't understand how that's so sophisticated and how they're figuring that out. Like to convince people to think what they don't think. But I also think that what you're saying about the religion thing is that if you don't have religion, you need a religion. That's the problem. It's not whether you have a religion or you don't have a religion. It's pick a religion. So if it's a religion that's ancient and that has some really good values, or it's a rock and roll band, or it's drugs, or it's sitting, in an encampment in Columbia University. It's all about us wanting to be connected to something greater than us. The terrifying thing is if that thing wants to kill all the Jews, we're in trouble. The thing that really scares me the most is that these are future politicians. This age.
It's the future of our country.
This is the future politicians. I mean, if you're out, if Texas doesn't secede, I don't know if that might be the best option. And we'll go there.
Yeah, go see the movie.
There's enough
Civil
room.
War.
I didn't see it yet. Did you see it?
I saw it, yeah.
Is it great? Terrible.
It's pretty good.
Okay, fine. I gotta watch it. I didn't see it yet. No, I just the idea of it. I mean, I love your thing. You're like, it's happening. This is how we gotta deal with it. With 100%. Me, I'm like, I don't want to live in a world where it's happening. So it's not like I'm avoiding it, but I have been avoiding it. I'm like, I want to live in a world where I'm running sober living homes and I have people who are struggling and they are building their lives into amazing lives. I'm not thinking about someone trying to murder my kids. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you have another important mission that occupies a lot of real estate in your mind.
Yeah.
Right? So the thought of giving up any of that space to anything external other than the mission that you're currently engaged in, it's a tough thing to wrap your head around, right? Because who has time in the day as it is? The cost of living is outrageous. Our responsibilities and duties are crazy just with family. Now incorporate work. Now incorporate saving other people's lives, making a difference for other people. You can't be emotionally disengaged from that if you want to make an impact. Right? You talk about connection to a higher thing, whatever that is, right? So to make a difference in somebody else's life, they have to connect with you. They got to believe you. They're entrusting you with what it is that you're trying to impart on them. Right? We're doing the same thing. We're just doing it with a security conscious mind in place. And unfortunately today, it's not a luxury anymore. It's a necessity. It's a necessity.
I think that's what's really killing me.
Yes.
I saw like what people are doing as a luxury. Like, okay, it's good. It's good. You have a gun. You learn how to protect yourself. You learn, you learn how to like put a tourniquet on. Like, it sounds good. Like you want to be a Boy Scout, go do it. Now I feel like if you don't do it, you're an idiot. Like, and
Yeah.
My wife's been saying this to me. My wife is usually right.
Okay, so I was at the range last night with 613. We have our annual qualifications. You want to know what made me so happy? I took a pause because I'm looking in each of the lanes, right, that people are in qualifying. When we started this endeavor 20-something years ago, it was 5 guys, 6 guys. We all looked the same, right? It was just 6 bros
Right.
doing bro stuff. And now I'm standing there in the range, and I see a Hasidic guy in the first lane, a Litvish guy in the next lane, a Sephardic guy in the next lane, right? A woman with a sheitel and a skirt. And I am filled with pride. And I'm so happy looking at this diversity of the Jewish community coming together, right? Because what are the odds that a Sephardic guy is going to walk into a Hasidic shtibel in Borough Park? Probably not great. I'm not saying it's impossible, but absent a need, right? The likelihood of that happening is probably rare-ish.
Right.
Okay? And by the same token, a woman with a sheitel that could probably be, I don't know, a school administrator, a rebbitzin or something, right? What are the odds that you're ever going to catch her in a shooting range?
That's
right?
true.
In the lane next to, I don't know, somebody that's not Shomer Shabbos, right? But here we all are interacting with each other, and what we look like and our stations in life have no bearing. We're coming together for a singular purpose that is universal amongst us, and there's pride, right? And there's no issue with one person turning to the other going, hey, can you help me with this? And I'm encountering this issue. Do you have a similar issue? It's amazing. It's amazing. You look at what's going on in Israel and how many Haredim now, kids that would normally defer from military service, there are full units now of yeshiva boys.
It's wild.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Tzitzis out, beards, payas.
When you were there was like almost none. I mean, it
was
didn't
none.
exist. There was
none.
Nacha Haredi. I don't know.
There was none.
But that was all the guys that were going off the derech.
None. I was there with a bunch of foreigners. It was like the French Foreign Legion from all over the world. South Africa, Norway, Great Britain. Yeah, from all over the place. It's
a lifetime ago, right?
Yeah, you're talking 30 something years ago. Yeah. But
when you say that, you're like, damn, I'm old. that's what I do. Whenever I say 30 years ago,
I'm trying to calculate.
How could I say 30 years ago?
I'm like, wait a second. Am I doing the math wrong? Like, that's what I'm
terrible.
thinking in my head. Like, that doesn't make sense, but that's the reality.
It's just trying to register that I'm 30 years old, but I'm way past that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's
yeah, I went to Israel 30 years ago, I think. 94? Where are we at? Jeez.
Yeah, I was there 93, 94.
That's forever ago.
Yeah.
Okay, we went on for a really long time, and I loved it, and there's so many more things I would love to talk about, but I'm going to ask you the final question.
Shoot.
Okay, rooftop shout to the world message. What would, like, if let's say 1 million people listen to this, which won't happen, but
no,
what's your message?
It
will happen in time. You'll have to come back when I have 1 million followers. But what do you yell to the world? What's your thing that you want to just say to the world?
Wow, pretty profound. Am Yisrael Chai.
Okay.
Number one.
You want smoke, baby.
That's right. We're way more powerful than I think we give ourselves credit for. We can accomplish a lot of things, and I don't just mean professionally and amongst our families. The world is a really harsh place. It's difficult to be. It feels difficult to be a Jew today. It shouldn't. Embrace it. We're a nation and a people that we're not survivors, and I don't want to be in a survivor mindset. We are thrivers. We are thrivers. This is a blip in the grand scheme of things. We're going to persevere. We're going to get through this. We're going to be better, stronger. Shameless plug, get trained. Get a minimal amount of training under your belt. Empower yourselves. I promise you, it won't just help you feel, stronger and, less vulnerable. It translates into parenthood. It translates professionally. You you can use these skills and this mindset to be productive in every aspect of your life. And I think it behooves every man, woman, and child, every Jew today, to get a requisite minimum amount of training so that October 7th never happens again. And if they even think or try, we are prepared.
Wow. That's awesome. I didn't even warn you I was going to ask that question, so that's amazing. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming all the way out here.
All the way out, man.
I'm going to say it's from Texas, but you were already in New York.
But it's true.
But you came. You came from Texas.
Yeah, I'll come again. This is definitely a worthwhile cause. And honestly, privilege, honor to be here. Thank you so much, Sonny. Thanks for keeping the connection and making this happen.
This is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for this day that I've been given. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this chance. Thank you for this chance to live anew.